A brutal arrest, a shocking family secret, and a fight for justice that will leave you speechless. This is Catherine's story. Endeavor to watch till the end to uncover the shocking twists and powerful ending that will stay with you long after the credits roll. It was a cool, overcast morning in Greystone. The town streets were alive with the sound of car engines, parents chatting, and children laughing as they made their way to school. At Willow Creek Elementary, Catherine Spencer eased her small, second-hand sedan into a parking space near the curb. She took a deep breath, her hand instinctively moving to her swollen belly. At 8 months pregnant, every movement felt like a monumental effort. "All right, Lily," she said softly, turning to her wide-eyed daughter in the backseat. "You've got your lunchbox. Homework." Lily, with her curly hair tied into 2 neat puffs, nodded eagerly. "Yup, I'm ready." Catherine smiled and opened the car door, stepping out with deliberate care. She glanced around the parking lot, her eyes following the stream of parents dropping off their kids. Across the lot, a sleek, white SUV pulled in aggressively, jerking into a space beside her. Catherine winced as the driver barely missed her side mirror. She placed a protective hand on Lily's back and guided her toward the school's entrance. The SUV's door slammed shut, and a tall, blonde woman emerged, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. "Hey," the woman called out, her tone already brimming with hostility. Catherine stopped and turned, confused. "Are you talking to me?" Catherine asked, her voice calm but tired. "Yes, I'm talking to you," the woman snapped, her eyes narrowing. "You almost hit me pulling in. Are you blind, or just reckless?" Catherine's eyes widened in disbelief. "Excuse me? You were the one speeding through the lot. I had the right of way." "Oh, of course you'd say that," the woman hissed, stepping closer. Her name was Grace Eldridge, and her pristine appearance, perfectly curled hair, crisp white blouse, and diamond earrings, screamed privilege. "You were driving like a maniac. You could have hit someone's kid." Catherine's hand instinctively moved to her belly. "Lady, I got a child in my car and another on the way. I was driving carefully. Don't make this into something it's not." Grace's face twisted in outrage. "Oh, so now I'm the liar. You smacked my car window with your hand when I pulled in, didn't you? You're violent." Catherine laughed, though it held no humor. "What? That's ridiculous. I didn't touch your car." But Grace was already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the police. You can explain it to them." Catherine's stomach churned. She didn't want this confrontation, especially not here, in front of the school. She turned to Lily, whose small face was filled with worry. "Go inside, sweetheart," Catherine said softly, brushing a hand across her daughter's cheek. "I'll be fine." Lily hesitated, glancing nervously between her mother and Grace. "Mommy." "It's okay, baby. Go." Reluctantly, Lily nodded and ran toward the school doors. Catherine took another deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. But deep down, anger bubbled. This woman's entitlement was unbearable, but Catherine knew she couldn't let it escalate. A police cruiser pulled into the parking lot a few minutes later. Grace waved her arms dramatically to flag it down. The car stopped, and out stepped Officer Daniel Thornton. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his blue uniform crisp, and his expression unreadable behind a pair of dark sunglasses. "Good morning, ma'am," Thornton said to Grace, his voice low and steady. "What seems to be the problem?" Grace immediately launched into an exaggerated retelling of the events. "Officer, that woman over there," she pointed at Catherine, "nearly rammed into my car, screamed at me, and even hit my window. She's completely unhinged." Thornton glanced at Catherine, who stood a few feet away, her arms crossed over her chest. He nodded and walked over to her. "Ma'am," he said, his tone clipped, "I'm going to need to hear your side of the story." Catherine, trying to keep her frustration in check, spoke evenly. "Officer, I was dropping my daughter off like everyone else. This woman nearly sideswiped me pulling into the lot, and now she's making up lies because I called her out on it. Thornton studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "All right. I need your name and ID." "My name is Catherine," she said, her voice steady. "But I don't see why you need my ID. I haven't done anything wrong." Thornton's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I'm conducting an investigation. You're required to provide your full name." "I'm not required to give you my ID unless you have a reason to suspect I've committed a crime," Catherine replied, her voice firm but calm. "That's the law." Thornton's demeanor shifted, his face hardened, and he stepped closer. "Don't get smart with me. Just hand over your ID." Catherine's hand shook as she reached into her pocket, not for her ID, but for her phone. She unlocked it and began recording. "I'm not resisting," she said, looking directly into the camera. "I'm just protecting myself." Thornton's face turned red. "Turn that off," he barked. "No," Catherine said firmly. "I have every right to record this interaction." The tension snapped. Thornton reached forward and grabbed Catherine's wrist, yanking the phone from her hand. "Hey," she shouted. "Don't touch me. I'm pregnant." Thornton didn't listen. His movements were quick and aggressive, his grip rough as he twisted her arm behind her back. Catherine cried out in pain. "Stop resisting," Thornton growled, forcing her against the chain-link fence that bordered the school parking lot. "I'm not resisting," Catherine screamed. "I'm pregnant. Please, stop." A crowd had gathered. Parents, teachers, and students staring in horror. Some of them had their phones out, recording the scene. Catherine's cries echoed through the lot as Thornton pushed her to the ground. She landed hard on her stomach, the breath knocked out of her. Tears streamed down her face as she begged, "Please, my baby, don't do this." Thornton slapped handcuffs onto her wrists and hauled her to her feet. "You're under arrest for resisting an officer," he said coldly. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some shouting at Thornton to stop. A young teacher ran up, her voice trembling. "Officer, she's pregnant. This isn't right." "Stay back," Thornton barked, dragging Catherine toward his cruiser. Catherine's legs wobbled beneath her, her whole body trembling. As she was shoved into the back seat, her eyes searched the crowd for Lily. Her daughter stood frozen at the school entrance, tears streaming down her cheeks. Catherine mouthed the words, "It's okay," before the car door slammed shut. But deep down, she knew it wasn't okay. Nothing about this was okay. And as the cruiser pulled away, the weight of her helplessness pressed down on her like never before. The video spread like wildfire. In less than 24 hours, it was everywhere, from local news broadcasts to social media feeds across the country. The grainy footage showed everything. Officer Thornton pinning Catherine to the fence, her desperate cries of, "I'm pregnant, stop," and the chilling image of her collapsing onto the pavement. The final moments, where she lay helplessly on her stomach, her voice cracking in pain, were burned into the minds of everyone who saw it. The headline on Greystone News Network read, "Pregnant woman slammed to the ground outside school by police officer." On social media, hashtags like #JusticeForCatherine and #racial profiling trended, drawing national attention. The reactions were swift and divisive. Some residents of Greystone rallied behind Catherine, horrified by the brutality. A candlelight vigil was organized outside the school, where parents, students, and activists gathered to show their support. Others, however, defended Officer Thornton. She was resisting. One comment read on the town's online forum, "If she'd just done what she was told, none of this would have happened." Another user replied, "Are you serious? She was pregnant. Thornton's a thug hiding behind a badge." The town, once a quiet and close-knit community, had become a boiling pot of tension and unrest. At home, Catherine sat on the edge of her bed, staring blankly out the window. The bruises on her wrists from the handcuffs had turned a deep purple, and her back ached from where Thornton had forced her down. But the worst pain wasn't physical. It was the memory of her daughter's tearful face as she was shoved into the squad car. "I can't sleep," Catherine whispered, her voice trembling. "Every time I close my eyes, I hear him yelling. I feel his hands on me." Michael, her husband, knelt in front of her, his large hands gently holding hers. "I know, baby," he said softly. "I know it's hard, but we're going to get through this. Together." Catherine pulled her hands away and shook her head. "You don't get it, Michael. I keep thinking about the baby. What if something's wrong? What if?" Her voice broke, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Michael stood and paced the room, his own frustration simmering. "I should have been there," he said through clenched teeth. "If I'd been there, that bastard wouldn't have touched you." "Stop," Catherine said weakly. "You weren't there. It doesn't matter now." But it did matter. It mattered to both of them, and the weight of the incident hung between them like a storm cloud. Michael wanted to protect her, to fight back, but Catherine was too exhausted to think about what came next. All she wanted was to feel safe again, something that seemed impossible now. Across town, Officer Daniel Thornton sat at his kitchen table, a cold beer in front of him. His wife, Karen, stood with her arms crossed, glaring at him from the other side of the room. "This is a disaster, Dan," she said sharply. "Do you have any idea what people are saying about you? The whole town thinks you're some kind of racist monster." Thornton slammed the beer bottle down, the sound echoing in the small kitchen. "I did my job," he snapped. She was resisting arrest. She refused to cooperate. What was I supposed to do? Just walk away? She was pregnant. Karen shot back. "You threw a pregnant woman to the ground, Dan. Do you even hear yourself?" Thornton ran a hand through his hair, his frustration boiling over. "She didn't give me a choice," he muttered. "These people, they think they can do whatever they want. Talk back, ignore the law. She brought this on herself." Karen's face twisted in disgust. "You need to stop talking like that. This isn't about her anymore. This is about you. About our family. Do you have any idea what this could do to us? To our kids?" Thornton didn't respond. Deep down, he felt the walls closing in. The department had placed him on administrative leave while they conducted an internal investigation, but he could feel the whispers among his colleagues, the way they avoided eye contact with him. He thought about the video, the way it had painted him as the villain. He thought about Catherine's face, the way she had pleaded with him. For the first time, a small flicker of doubt crept into his mind, but he shoved it aside. He couldn't afford to second-guess himself. 2 days after the incident, Catherine sat across from Alan Reyes in his small, cluttered office. Alan was young, maybe in his early 30s, with sharp eyes and an energy that seemed out of place in the dimly lit room. "Mrs. Spencer," he began, leaning forward, "what happened to you was a gross violation of your rights. Officer Thornton's actions were not only unethical, they were illegal. We have a solid case here." Catherine shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "I don't know," she said softly. "I'm already so stressed. I don't know if I can handle a legal battle right now. My baby." Helen cut her off gently. "I understand. I know this is a lot, but you can't let him get away with this. If we don't hold him accountable, he'll do it again. To someone else." Catherine looked down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously. She thought about Lily, about the lessons she wanted to teach her daughter. She thought about all the times she'd felt powerless in her life, about all the times she'd stayed quiet because it was easier. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for her children, for their future. "All right," she said finally, her voice steady. "Let's do it." Alan smiled, a determined glint in his eyes. "Good, I promise you. We're going to make this right." But as Catherine left his office, a knot of anxiety tightened in her chest. She had taken the first step toward justice, but the road ahead was long and uncertain. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the fear that Thornton wasn't done with her yet. Catherine sat in Alan's office, her hands nervously cradling her swollen belly as the young lawyer shuffled through a stack of papers. His normally energetic demeanor was replaced by a heavy silence, his brow furrowed in concentration. The hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound in the room. "Ellen," Catherine said, her voice shaky. "What's wrong? Did you find something?" Ellen glanced up at her, his jaw tightening. He hesitated, as if trying to figure out how to phrase what he was about to say. Finally, he leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "Catherine," he said carefully, "I don't know how to tell you this, but you're not who you think you are." Catherine blinked, confused. "What do you mean? I don't understand." Ellen took a deep breath. "During the discovery process, I was looking into your background. Birth records, family history, anything that might help us frame your case and show how this incident has impacted your life. And I found something. Something big." He paused, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Your father is Samuel Green." The name hit Catherine like a punch to the chest. "What?" she breathed, shaking her head. "That can't be right. My father's name was Arthur Spencer. He passed away when I was a baby. My mom told me." "I don't doubt that's what she told you," Alan said quickly, "but the evidence doesn't lie. Samuel Green had an affair with your mother decades ago. Around the time you were born, he paid her a lump sum of money, a substantial amount, to keep quiet and leave town." Catherine stared at him, her mind spinning. Samuel Green, the billionaire, the beloved philanthropist, the man who had been hailed as a champion of justice and equality, a figure who many believed could one day run for president. That Samuel Green was her father. Ellen leaned back, watching her carefully. "This explains why you've been targeted so hard by Green's legal team since we filed the lawsuit. They don't want this connection getting out. If it does, it could destroy his spotless reputation, especially with the election coming up." Catherine pressed a hand to her temple, her head pounding. Her entire life, her mother had never spoken about her father. She had grown up believing he was just a man who had loved her mother but died too soon. To find out he was alive, and not just alive, but one of the most powerful men in the country, was too much to process. "So, what do we do now?" she whispered. Ellen's expression hardened. "They're going to try to silence you. In fact, they already have. Green's legal team reached out to me this morning. They're offering you a private settlement, a large one. Millions. But there's a catch." Catherine looked up, her stomach twisting. "What kind of catch?" "You drop the lawsuit. You don't speak to the press. You sign a non-disclosure agreement, and you never mention Green or Thornton again." For a moment, the room was silent. Then Catherine shook her head, her voice trembling with anger. No, I'm not taking their money. I'm not letting them buy my silence. I want Thornton held accountable for what he did. I want justice." Alan nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I was hoping you'd say that." The investigation into his behavior had uncovered years of misconduct, complaints from other citizens about excessive force, allegations of racial bias, even an incident involving the wrongful arrest of a black teenager 3 years earlier. All of it was coming to light. The police department, desperate to distance itself from the controversy, suspended him without pay. Thornton's wife, Karen, had had enough. She packed her bags, took the kids, and left him a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore. I won't let you drag us down with you." Thornton sat alone in his dark, empty house, a bottle of whiskey in one hand and a crumpled photograph of his family in the other. The walls felt like they were closing in, the silence suffocating. And through it all, one name echoed in his mind. Catherine Spencer. He blamed her for everything. If she hadn't resisted, if she hadn't recorded him, if she hadn't made this such a spectacle, his life would still be intact. The bitterness consumed him, twisting his thoughts into something dark and dangerous. It started small. Catherine would find a note slipped under her door with phrases like, "You'll regret this," scrawled in angry handwriting. One night, her car tires were slashed. She called the police, but no evidence could be traced back to Thornton. Michael, ever the protector, grew increasingly suspicious. One night, as he was taking out the trash, he spotted a figure lurking near the edge of their property. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, and unmistakably Thornton. "Hey!" Michael shouted, stepping toward him. But Thornton didn't move. He stood there for a moment, his face hidden in the shadows, before turning and walking away. When Michael returned to the house, Catherine saw the fury in his eyes. "That's it," he said, his voice tight with anger. "We're installing cameras, and I'm staying home from work. I'm not leaving you alone." Catherine nodded, but deep down, a pit of fear had taken root in her chest. She could see it in Thornton's eyes when he'd thrown her to the ground. He wasn't just angry, he was vengeful. And now, with nothing left to lose, he was unpredictable. Despite the threats, despite the fear, Catherine refused to back down. Every time she thought about accepting Green's offer, she thought about Lily, about the world her daughter was growing up in, about the lessons she wanted to teach her, about courage, justice, and standing up for what's right. "This isn't just about me," Catherine told Alan during a late-night meeting. "It's about every black woman who's ever been told to stay quiet. It's about my daughter and my unborn child. I won't let them scare me into silence." Alan nodded, his expression serious. "Then we keep fighting, no matter what." But as they prepared for the next phase of the case, Catherine couldn't shake the feeling that Thornton wasn't done with her yet. Every shadow seemed darker, every knock at the door sent her heart racing. The man who had taken everything from her was spiraling, and she knew it was only a matter of time before he came for her again. And this time, she feared he wouldn't stop until one of them was destroyed. The lights of the TV studio were bright, almost blinding. Catherine sat stiffly in her chair, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her belly was round and heavy, the baby's kicks a constant reminder of what she was fighting for. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of revelations, threats, and moments of despair, but today she felt a strange calm. Today, she would speak her truth. No filters, no lawyers, no secret deals. Across from her sat the anchor, a polished woman with a practiced smile and a voice that could soothe or incite, depending on what the moment required. The cameras were rolling, and millions of viewers across the country were watching. "Catherine Spencer," the anchor began, "you've become a symbol of resilience and justice after your harrowing encounter with Officer Daniel Thornton. But recently, new details about your life have come to light. You've revealed that you are the daughter of billionaire politician Samuel Green, a fact that has stunned the nation. Why did you decide to share this now?" Catherine took a deep breath. "Because the truth matters," she said firmly. "My connection to Samuel Green doesn't change what happened to me that day outside Willow Creek Elementary. It doesn't excuse Officer Thornton's actions or the systemic issues that allowed him to act the way he did. But people deserve to know the full story, all of it." The anchor leaned forward slightly, her curiosity palpable. "And how has Mr. Green responded to your decision to go public?" Catherine's lips pressed into a thin line. "He offered me money to stay silent. I refused. This isn't about money or power. It's about justice." The anchor nodded, her expression a mix of admiration and concern. "And what about Thornton? His lawyers claim that his life has been ruined because of the backlash from your case. Do you feel any responsibility for that?" Catherine's jaw tightened. "Ruined?" she echoed. "Officer Thornton ruined his own life the moment he decided my rights didn't matter. I didn't ask to be thrown to the ground while I was 8 months pregnant. I didn't ask for him to threaten me, to terrorize my family. If he's facing consequences now, it's because of his actions, not mine." The anchor was about to ask another question when chaos erupted behind the scenes. A loud commotion sounded from the studio entrance, shouts, the crash of something falling. And then, a collective gasp as a figure burst onto the set. Daniel Thornton was a shadow of the man he had been. His uniform was gone, replaced by a wrinkled hoodie and jeans. His face was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot and wild, and in his hand, trembling but unmistakable, was a gun. "Everybody stay where you are," Thornton barked, his voice hoarse. The studio staff froze, some ducking behind cameras and desks. Catherine's heart raced as Thornton turned his gaze on her, his face twisted with rage. "This is your fault," he spat, pointing the gun at her. "You ruined my life. My family's gone. My job's gone. Everything I had is gone because of you." Catherine's breath caught, but she forced herself to remain calm. The studio's security guards were nowhere to be seen, and she knew that one wrong move could set Thornton off. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her, "you need to put the gun down. This isn't the way to fix anything." "Shut up," Thornton screamed, his hand shaking. "You don't get to tell me what to do. You think you're some kind of hero. You're nothing but a liar and a troublemaker." The cameras were still rolling, broadcasting the entire scene live. Across the nation, viewers sat frozen, watching the standoff unfold. Thornton stepped closer to Catherine, his eyes glinting with desperation. "You think you're better than me," he snarled. "You think you can destroy my life and just walk away." "I don't think I'm better than you," Catherine said, her voice firm but calm. "I think you made mistakes, big ones. But this won't help you. It'll only make things worse." Thornton hesitated, his grip on the gun faltering for just a moment. But before he could respond, a voice rang out from behind him. "Drop the gun, Thornton." It was one of the studio's security guards, his own weapon drawn. Thornton froze, his eyes darting wildly between Catherine and the guard. "Don't do this," the guard said firmly. "It's over." For a long, agonizing moment, Thornton stood there, the gun still raised. Then, with a shuddering breath, he let it fall to the ground. The guard rushed forward, pinning Thornton's arms behind his back as another staff member called the police. Catherine exhaled a shaky breath, her hands trembling as the weight of the moment hit her. "Keep watching, as what you are about to find out will leave you speechless yet heart-touching. Endeavor to like, share, and subscribe. Let us know in the comment your thought." Thornton was arrested on live television, the footage spreading just as quickly as the original video of the incident outside the school. This time, however, the nation's outrage was directed at him. In court, Thornton's long history of misconduct was laid bare. Citizen complaints, excessive force incidents, and racially biased actions that had been quietly swept under the rug were brought to light. His colleagues testified against him, painting a picture of a man who had abused his power for years. Catherine took the stand during the trial, recounting her experience in harrowing detail. Her voice broke as she described the moment Thornton slammed her to the ground, the terror she felt for her unborn child. The jury was visibly moved, some wiping tears from their eyes. In the end, Thornton was sentenced to 15 years in prison for assault, misconduct, and making terroristic threats. Weeks after the trial, Catherine gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She named her Hope, a reminder of everything she had fought for. Though Catherine had won the case and Thornton was held accountable, the scars of the incident remained. She often woke up in the middle of the night, her heart racing with memories of that morning outside the school. Samuel Green, under pressure from the public, issued a statement apologizing for his past actions and donated millions to organizations fighting racial injustice. He reached out to Catherine privately, asking for a chance to reconcile, but she refused. "You don't get to rewrite history now," she told him. "I don't need your money, and I don't need you." Catherine sat down, cradling baby Hope in her arms, holding her hand tightly. She thought, it wasn't just about her story. It was about everyone who had ever been silenced, who had ever been told their pain didn't matter. "For you, my sweet girl," she whispered to Hope, her voice soft but strong. "We'll keep fighting." Thank you for watching. A story of resilience and justice. Catherine's story reminds us of the importance of standing up against injustice, no matter how overwhelming the odds. It's a powerful tale of courage, accountability, and the human spirit's ability to rise from the ashes. If this story resonated with you, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more compelling, thought-provoking stories like this one. Your support helps us continue creating content that shines a light on the struggles, triumphs, and untold narratives that shape our world. Let's keep the conversation going. What would you have done in Catherine's situation? What does justice mean to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to turn on notifications. Click that bell icon so you never miss an upload. Together, we can spark important discussions and build a community that values empathy, understanding, and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay curious, and keep fighting for what's right. See you in the next video.